So I'm Cathy Dowd with the U.S. Forest Service, National Forests in North Carolina, and that's the Nantahala, Pisgah, Uwharrie, and Croatan National Forests. Thank you for having me here to talk about talking with the public. This is my fourth year here on the National Forests in North Carolina, and that's after working in Washington State and Arizona, two states where prescribed fire is welcomed because of the public's experience with large wildfires. In choosing to come here to North Carolina, it's funny to think about to me now, but I thought that I would be getting away from fire. But it was 2016 when I came here, and that was, of course, a historic fire year in Western North Carolina. And I started in March of 2016, and I arrived to see that we had active wildfires burning, and we also had prescribed burn operations going. And I thought to myself, what kind of place have I come to where we can do both of those things at the same time? Because I was certainly used to, it being fire season, it being prescribed fire season, not a thing where we could have both going on at the same time. And I had yet to understand all of these dang microclimates that we have that make one place too dry for prescribed fire, one place too wet, and another place just right. So North Carolina was a great deal more complex fire environment that I had imagined. And just as I was surprised by this, I thought that much of the public, and that's what I'm seeing, that much of the public is surprised by how fire-oriented these landscapes are. We have these longtime residents who are familiar with our frequent fire ecosystems in North Carolina, but what I found is that we have about 100,000 new residents each year. And each year we also have about 50 million tourists coming to North Carolina. So how to talk with the public with the goal of gaining and keeping their support for prescribed fire? Well, I try to anchor what I'm doing in the principles of risk communication. And there are more principles that I'm going to present here, but these are the ones that I keep coming back to as I work to continuously improve our public communication in prescribed fire. So the first that I think about is that the public, for any topic, has a much broader range of concerns than an expert might imagine. And that's because the public is really using its imagination to fill in all of the details that they don't know. And so just when you think that you've heard it all from the public in terms of what they might be concerned about, that you can't even think in your wildest dreams that they might be concerned about, you'll get a new one. And just when you think you've got those old ones put to rest, they'll keep popping up and returning. And you have to consider that these public concerns, you have to consider them equally with the experts' concerns, because you can't just tell someone what risks they should accept. When it comes to risk, everybody's going to make that determination themselves, and their thought process may not make sense to you, especially, they're using their imagination to kind of fill in the details, right? But in risk communication, you learn that what you can do is empathize with them, then focus on safety and explain the process. However, if they don't trust you, you can't communicate effectively with them. And building trust and our credibility, giving them a reason to trust us, that's a really long-term process. So you can't just show up on forest in March and then by September expect that you're going to be that trusted person. And what you know also is that trust is built by individuals, not organizations. So the U.S. Forest Service itself, like, people aren't going to have a trust in that organization, but when they see Cathy Dowd, I hope that they have trust in her. So people need to think about us as people, not bureaucrats, not an agency. And we also know that actions speak louder than words. So it's important that we show that we do good work and we show that it has positive results. So that all sounds very easy, doesn't it? So we should be successful in communication if we just take folks' concerns seriously, empathize with them, build trust, and show them our results. And yet what I found is that it doesn't always succeed. And that's because we have additional challenges, right? And one is that it's science, and science, well, there are overwhelming numbers of the public, I think, that just lack basic scientific understanding. And they lack the patience to even try and understand. They have very low scientific literacy. They're impatient with technical details. And I think we've all seen, particularly recently, there's quite an anti-expert mentality. And when you add to that the external influencers who are out there, and for us in the Forest Service, it's really just a few anti-prescribed fire folks that are out there trolling our social media, for example, and trying to get the attention of the media. And they're also writing to their congressional representatives. On our social media, they're commenting about burns, even on posts that are about unrelated topics, that are non-controversial, that are even like good things that we're doing, you know, in terms of restoring stream banks or, you know, improving a recreation area. You'll see them say, well, that's just great and fine and dandy, but I wish you'd stop setting the forest on fire. And then on our burn notices, they're really piling on the comments that attempt to really trigger emotional responses in people by talking about, you know, the elderly and their lung capacity, by talking about how smoke might affect a fetus. And so it's to the point where there really is just an overload. There's so much going on in the world that it's hard for people to focus on the thing that you're trying to get their attention on, you know, prescribed fire in this case, and why we're doing that. And you can't expect that they're going to remember anything that you've told them in the past, because it's very likely that even if you did get their attention before, you probably weren't really getting through to them to the point where it's sinking. And I think that most of us know that the way to understand something is to have to explain it to others. And so when folks in the public hear about these things, you know, they're not really talking about it, they're just hearing it. So it's very likely that they're really not really understanding it to the point where they're going to remember it for the next season. They're going to remember it even a few months from now. So bringing all of that together, here's how I've generally approached our talking with the public over prescribed fire. And this picture here, this really captures a moment when I was a public information officer on a prescribed burn on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I was pulled off at one of those parking areas where members of the public were just, you know, passing through, stopping and asking questions about what was going on. What was all that smoke that they were seeing? And my snack actually gave me some really good and relevant advice to think before you speak in any language. And so the way that I approach this is to start with a simple explanation and then add further details as they're needed. You know, go with the short and sweet, easy vocabulary, and then wait to see if their eyes glaze over before proceeding with more information. Because some people just want to know what's going on should be going on. Some people are more concerned about how it's going to impact their day. You know, well, they were planning on going out for a bike ride and now they see that it's going to be smoky. So what's that about? You know, so you have to sort of give them a real easy reason to agree that this needs to be going on today. I prefer to use our fire staff as spokespeople. First of all, everyone loves a first responder, you know, so they see our firefighters as real people who can be trusted, more so than they see someone who is in a different kind of uniform. You know, if they see you in yellow shirt and you have smoke on your shirt, and you smell like smoke and your face is a little bit smudged up, you just seem like you can be more trusted than that person in the clean uniform, I think. And we can coach our fire staff into being caring and empathetic. In fact, I think that they're better at it than I am. Sometimes I have trouble sort of, because I know that this is the good work that we need to do. Sometimes I do have trouble caring about someone who they are more concerned about that bike ride that they're going on that day than the fact that we're doing some important restoration work. So we also can coach our fire staff into focusing on our safety messages and the big why. And I think they're really great at that. In fact, at least in the Forest Service in North Carolina, we just have folks who really do a great job connecting with people, making them understand that what we're doing is safe and that there's a great reason why we're doing it. And often on social media, here I will let other people kind of do our dirty work. So in fact, you guys may be some of those people who do this, but they're out there arguing with the trolls because if the US Forest Service is always responding, it's just not as, I think, believable as if other members of the public kind of pile on and say, no, there's a good reason why they're doing that, or I'm a firefighter and I understand what they're doing, or I live next to these forests and I believe my home is safer when they do this kind of work. I find that it also helps to piggyback on others' credibility. So especially linking to some websites like the Nature Conservancy, where they talk about the need to do prescribed fire. The Longleaf Alliance has a really great website for when we're burning in longleaf pine. So I think that, this approach, which is just real basic, has been working for us. We still do, I believe, have those folks that we will never convince that we're doing the right thing. And I think that they have their own personal reasons for why they will never be convinced. But if you can get people before they've sort of made up their minds, before they're set in an opinion, then I think we have that capacity to sort of win them over to their side. So even if they don't remember by the next season, like all the things we taught them last season about prescribed fire, I think as long as we can keep their minds open and sort of remind them that, oh yeah, that is something that I've seen before and it wasn't the end of the world, it wasn't that bad. We can at least kind of keep them on our side as not being against us. So I really love criticism. If you ever find yourself looking at our information and thinking about how it can be improved, I'd like you to just holler at me and tell me what you think. Here's my email address and the social media accounts that I've mentioned that we have. It's just Facebook and Twitter for us. And also, you'll see on our prescribed burn notices this hashtag for burn alerts. And we found that in working together with the adjoining national forest, sometimes folks just don't know where the smoke is coming from. So we all tag our posts with this burn alert notice so that even if the public doesn't know to find it, this is how we can find each other's burn information when we don't know about it. We also try to use that hashtag for good fire so that we can have, that we can kind of present that idea in people's minds right away, that the smoke that they're seeing is for a good reason. It's not a wildfire that's burning out of control. It's something that we're doing for good reasons and for good purposes. So that is all I have. I can't see the chat, so I don't know if there are any questions, but I'm happy to take any if you have any.
Cathy, thank you so much. There is a comment that I am personally interested in hearing your take on. Dale says, I am guilty of arguing with the trolls. I just hope someone uninformed reading the conversation will learn something. So where do you think that line is of making sure that folks who may just be scrolling through or seeing the good information in response to maybe bad information versus wasting your time arguing with people who just aren't going to agree with you?
Yeah. So for me, what I've learned is that when I represent the U.S. Forest Service on Facebook, there is no way that I'm going to win an argument with people because, I am the National Forest in North Carolina. I'm not a person. So like I can never win those arguments. But what I do see is that when other members of the public get on there and make those arguments, it feels to me like they are making headway. And you might not make some headway with that, that one guy that we have who lives near Linville Gorge and is always in a post about every burn that we're doing. But you are making headway with the people who are reading his comments and thinking, oh, wow, does it really, affect people? Is the smoke really affecting people that way? Or, wow, are they really just doing this because, they have nothing better to do, or because they just want to go around setting the forest on fire? So I think you are making a difference for us in a way that I could not be doing it.
So one last question. What are your thoughts on the survey results that Megan Johnson just presented? In your experience, do you find the public to generally have a positive perception of the burns you conduct, or do you feel like there's a lot of pushback?
I feel like they have neither a positive nor a negative view of it. Like, for the most part, I feel like the public is really uninterested in what we're doing. I don't know if you find that depressing or not. In some ways, like, all I want to do is sort of keep them from being negative. Like, I wish that I could get them towards a positive perspective on this stuff. But I believe that for the most part, folks are just uninterested, and maybe that's for the best. That's kind of a pessimistic attitude I have. Maybe it's just today. On other days, maybe I'm a lot more positive about it.
Well, thank you,